by the regional level guides who are exclusively trained and licensed by the Ministry of Tourism, Government of India, to put the national motto of Atiti Devo Bhava into practice. The licensed guides was a concept initiated by the Government of India to make every tourist feel and absorb incredible India's cultural heritage and pristine beauty through the eyes of a qualified, well-trained and credible licensed guide. The minimum qualification to be a licensed guide is graduation with proficiency in English or any other foreign language. Candidates are selected based on a national level entrance test and interview, and the license is issued only after successful completion of an intense professional 6-month training program, police verification, and a final exam by the Government of India. As per law, only such licensed guides are allowed to provide guide services in the Archaeological Survey of India monuments in the respective regions. At present, 3,200 plus licensed guides are actively working in India who help earn huge amount of foreign exchange and indirectly contribute to the growth of the Indian economy. Regional level licensed guides are and have always been the cultural, social and heritage ambassadors of India. And with that, we will now introduce to you the speaker for today.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Makesh, Regional Level Guide from Chennai. Friends, I'm proud to introduce our speaker for the day, Professor Madhusudan Kalaiselvan. A few words about Professor Madhusudan Kalaiselvan. He is an architecture graduate. He is a gold medalist in his post-graduation and specializes in conservation and architectural research. He has been in academics for around a decade, mentoring students of popular schools of architecture. Professor Madhusudan Kalaiselvan is an active heritage enthusiast. His contributions have earned him the coveted Vedavalli Memorial Award for outstanding service by a young achiever in the field of South Indian heritage. He is well versed in the fields of art, architecture, heritage, cultural studies, and vernacular practices. Professor Madhusudan Kalaiselvan is a popular speaker on a wide range of topics associated with heritage, religion, and literature. He is a recent recipient of the title Ilakkiya Chemmal. Recognizing his mastery over Tamil literature, he curates and conducts tours to places of architectural and cultural interest. Professor Madhusudan Kalaiselvan is currently pursuing his doctoral research on temple town planning and also serves on government instituted panel for conservation of temples in Tamil Nadu. Today, he will be talking to us on Dance of Shiva as seen across India. On behalf of all the regional level guides across India, I request Professor Madhusudan Kalaiselvan to deliver his speech. Over to Dr. Kalaiselvan. Thank you.
பின்னாலும் தேவர்க்கும் மேலாய வேதியனை மன்னாளும் மன்னவர்க்கும் மாண்பாகி நின்றானை தன்னார் தமிழளிக்கும் தன்பாண்டி நாட்டானை பெண்ணாளும் பாகனை பேணு பெருந்துறையில் கண்ணார் கடல் காட்டி நாயேனை ஆட்கொண்ட அண்ணாமலையானை பாடுதுங்கான் அம்மானாய். Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. A very good evening to one and all. It's a privilege to be addressing this wonderful forum of the cultural, social ambassadors of this ancient country. And I'm really happy to be associated with an initiative like this, where the time that we have all got with the lockdown and the quarantine in place is being put to use in the best way possible. Thank you to the organizers once again for making this an extremely professional, the complete professional way in which this program was scheduled and is just being conducted. So the title given to me today is The Dance of Shiva as Seen Across India. The artistic rendition of the imagery of Shiva in several different dancing poses, what can be rightfully called as the most dynamic pose that has ever been captured, frozen in artistic ventures like painting or sculpture, bas-relief, motifs, is that of Shiva for sure. And this emblem today has evolved to become more like the symbol of India, a logo that best portrays India to the outside world. The Cholas, who mastered the art of bringing in bronzes, which depicts Shiva as Natesha or Nataraja, has earned a GI status for itself. So it's a good idea, healthy idea, in fact, to know about how the concept of dancing Shiva is a pan-Indian concept, which is seen its origin has developed, changed, accommodated changes, been influenced by literature, philosophy, spiritual practices, traditions, and more, and has come to a level where we have it in the present form. So it's a pan-Indian concept, though Nataraja per se is what is like the stamp trademark for the Cholas. It might be new, it's a good anecdote to note that he is a pan-Indian concept. A few limitations that I would like to set for myself before I start my talk. This is a wide topic, and every region of India, which has been ruled by several different dynasties, so regional wise, dynasty wise, period wise, all that, Nataraja's development as an icon can be studied, and it is worth a dozen doctoral theses. With the limitation of like 45 minutes that is offered to me, I'm just going to walk you through very specific critical examples, analyze a few to notice differences that are very particular. Nataraja today is the emblem of Shaivite tradition. Here, especially in South India, of all the different forms of Shiva available, the Agamas are probably the oldest codified works which speaks about different forms of Shiva. Dancing form is one amongst that. So we have a list of 25 different forms given to Shiva. Then there is a list which gets extended into 64 different forms, and so on. Some of them are common across India, like Bhairava, Veerabhadra, Nataraja, and some are very specific, region specific too. So Shiva, when he dances, it's supposed to portray the cosmic dance, which according to Indian tradition, keeps the universe moving. So the changes that happen here is all because of this dance. The dynamism which is there within every atom is what is understood as that of Nataraja. So any movement of any living being here on earth is caused by the essence of movement, which is what is portrayed by Nataraja here. And so the very basic Indian philosophical belief that God is omnipresent and omnipotent. He is there everywhere. He is within every living being. And it is his presence that keeps us moving, that keeps us alive, is extended and given an imagery like this. This is one of the several different philosophical descriptions, spiritual descriptions given to the icon of Shiva in this dancing form. Nataraja, the king of dances. The one that you see now in the screen is a very, very popular image of Nataraja from the classic Chola period. And it has come a long way before it has reached the way it is here on this particular image on the screen. It has started from something very, very rudimentary, simple, with a lot of local influence on it, and has evolved probably over a millennium to reach the 11th, 12th century, which can be rightly called the golden era of the Chola patterns. Because this is a critical example, I've portrayed it here. But to cover different styles and different artistic renditions of Nataraja from different zones in India, different parts of India, I'm starting from the eastern part. So we'll probably start from Orissa, present Odisha, where you have an extensive growth that can be studied from the most rudimentary one to a very ornamental and a complicated image. As many of you might be knowing, the Shatrubhanja in a place called Asanpat, Shatrubhanja is the name of the patron in whose period this icon was made, going by the Sanskrit inscription that is there as a part of the bas-relief sculpture. So for easy reference, the icon as such is called as Shatrubhanja. And this is one of those early icons. I wouldn't really say that this is the earliest available motif, because we've had recent excavations that had given out that has helped us reach out to very unknown images of Nataraja too. So one of those really ancient is from Asanpat in Odisha, and very popularly referred to as the Shatrubhanja Nataraja, going by the name of this king who belonged to the Naga clan, the dynasty, the political rule, which expanded between 2nd to the 4th century of the Common Era. A warrior who's been praised big time in the 13-line Sanskrit inscription, which forms a part of the bas-relief that you're seeing in the picture. And this particular Naga clan probably in most of the times spread across the 2 centuries of their rule. The most powerful rule in those 2 centuries, I mean, the Naga clan popularity was more during those 2 centuries. They ruled from the north and western regions of today's Odisha, and they had their own opponents in their period, and the political history spans that way. Shatrubhanja, whose father, mother, everybody is well documented, is revered as a very, very powerful warrior whose might is compared with that of Surya, Chandra, and other celestials. A person who patronized religious teachings, a person who patronized different religious people from different religious background. So he has built shrines dedicated to different deities, Hindu gods, and then there were also Buddhist viharas, Jain monks who were patronized, and more. So we get a lot of information about him from the 13-line, very poetic, beautiful Sanskrit inscription. Partly it's poetic and partly prose verses. This Nataraja, which is a part of the inscription that you see there on top, is one of those very rudimentary representations where the deity is 8-armed and the lowest 2 arms, both right and left, holds the veena. So Nataraja, being the god of dance, the king of dance, in fact, music is a part of dance. Rhythm is best expressed through music, and that has got to be produced through available choices of musical instruments. It can be percussional, it can be string, or a wind instrument. In this case, Nataraja has chosen the veena, a string instrument, and so he's holding the veena across his chest, and the one end of the veena is resting on who looks like a devotee, and a few scholars identify the devotee there as Shatrubhanja, but there is a debate on that. On the left side, to balance it artistically, you have the Nandi with a very noticeable hump, which Shiva touches with his left arm. Apart from that, he holds an Akshamala, rosary bead, on his right, and a Trishula, the trident, on his left. A most characteristic feature that is seen here, which gets carried over all the way up till Aihole Badami periods, is creating a sense of frame by holding a snake raised up above his head. So you can see the motion of the snake as such is well captured. The snake takes the profile of Shiva's hairlock, extends from his right, on the right hand is where the hood of the snake is. He catches the snake near its neck, and the tail end is caught in his left. So that kind of creates a curve, which is probably one of those inspirations which gave rise to framing the Nataraja panel inside a circle. And the most popular way it is framed here in South India, of course, is a circle which kind of brings in the frame, which has flames coming out of it. Here in South Indian tradition, it is understood as the orbit of the sun, and Shiva is dancing right there in the center of Surya Mandala. But the earliest depiction for creating a frame is from the snake which Nataraja holds all the way up above his head. There are absolutely no ornamentation seen in this. Completely, there is not a pair of bangle or anklets or necklace, nothing but for earrings. And very clearly, he is depicted with 2 different earrings. To his right, he wears what men wear, and on his left is the Patra Kundalam, which is very specifically for women. So the concept of Shiva being balanced by half man and half woman, the Shiva Shakti Aikyam or Ardhanarishwara concept has been in since then. And it is also nice to note that this tradition continues all the way down south too. But there are a few exceptions where on both the ears he wears similar identical pair of earrings. The Jatabharam is shown, and he wears a small waistband. And one more interesting feature here is he is depicted with an erect phallus. The Tandava pose is what is called as Chatura Tandava, where either of the feet is kept firmly flat on the pedestal, the ground on which he is dancing, and the other he raises a bit and balances himself on his toe fingers. So that's what is called as Chatura Tandava. Apparently, most of the icons that we see follows the Chatura Tandava pose. The Bhujanga Trasitam, or that form where the left leg or the right leg in some cases is raised all the way up in air, the most prominent bronze images of Nataraja that we see today is a later evolution. So this is one of those rudimentary forms where Nataraja is shown playing the veena, holding the Akshamala, Trishula with the Nandi and his devotee. Most identically is the snake which he holds upright. Then we have several depictions spanning between the 6th to the 9th century in many temples in Orissa. The most popular being the campus where you have the Rameshwara, Lakshmaneshwara, Bharateshwara and Shatrugneshwara temple complex. Very well maintained, well conserved now. So there are different images of Nataraja shown in the Sukhanasi, which is the circle there. There are two ways in which we see Nataraja in Orissa today, the ancient ones. One is getting him as a part of the Sukhanasi in the Vimana that you see in the pictures here. So you have so you have him in multi-armed, of course, but in everywhere he is only in the Chatura Tandava pose. The Bhujanga Trasitam, or raising it up in air, one leg in air, hasn't started. And you have the snake, the tradition of holding the snake above, that continues. The ornamentation has just picked up, and the most prominent one is the Yajñopavita, or the sacred thread that he wears. And there is a combination of exposing his genitals, or in some cases, there is ornamentation wherein he's shown wearing a dhoti also. The weapons and the number of arms differs, but in all cases, either within the frame or sometimes outside, or sometimes even both, you see him always accompanied by musicians who either play a percussion instrument or a veena or other things. So mostly in the pediments, anywhere starting from 4 to 10 armed Natarajas you see here. And yeah, one more significant change here is taking one arm, extending it across the chest. This is what is called as the Gajahastam. So throwing it in a dancing form, wherein he probably tries to rotate, and the wind is the movement, the dynamism is caught by depicting the hand cutting across his chest like that. So the Gajahastam kind of starts, and as the ornamentation and the complications in decoration develops, you see him accompanied by several devatas, the celestial beings. And the tradition, of course, has continued for close to 6-7 centuries at a stretch from the Asanpat by different dynasties. This is a very detailed one where you have the pediment is there and Nataraja is dancing. As I told you, he has a waist cover now and a few and some ornamentation in his waistband. He wears bangles here and bahu valayams, that is like what one wears around his arm. And the Jatabharam is even more detailed. You can see the hair lock bent and made into a bun like that. And the Yajñopavitam, the sacred thread, goes all the way up to his thighs. And the snake is, though the snake is missing, the hands have positioned that way. And there are more snakes here. The most easiest way to freeze a dancing form like this, or to freeze a dynamic form, is to wave hands and twist the torso. Ensure that the hand and leg movements are waved in all possible directions. So if you go to paint or sculpt a deity who is sitting or reclining or standing upright, it's not an issue, it's not a challenge because it's frozen position. But when you have to depict someone who's dancing, especially like Shiva that you see here, which is very dynamic, and if you want to achieve the depiction of dynamism even when it is frozen, the best way to do it is to ensure that the straight line is distorted, the mirror line that runs straight is distorted, but the balance is still maintained by projecting hands and legs in different directions. And another feature, apart from keeping him in pediments, another popular place is in bas-relief panels like this. And this is seen in Shatrugneshwara temple, where again, a proper frame, and it is again the Chatura Tandavam, and the depiction, he's depicted multiple armed. The snake goes in there, and the earrings are different, as you can see. The Jatabharam is there, and he's there is no cloth that covers his waist. The Rishabham is shown, and most interesting feature here is the depiction of Kartikeya or Subramanya on his peacock. The little kid he is, and the development of a halo that is right around there to bring in the concept of divinity or understanding, Nataraja is actually dancing in the Surya Mandala. The primordial energy for which, with which the universe functions is the sun. The most basic source of energy for all living beings is the sun. So if you think the sun is all independent, no, that's not the case. In fact, he is commissioned to do his duty and he is functioning because Shiva lives from inside. So he's the one who activates and he controls the day and night. So that's the religion, the philosophical base. So the orb that is shown there is Surya Mandala. And to make it even more clear, you see those flames that are depicted on the flat plate right behind. So you will have to imagine that as a circle which kind of encircles Nataraja. The disc there encircles Nataraja and he is dancing in the Surya Mandala. And that is Subramanya. And what makes this little kid cute is he's trying to imitate his father by throwing his right hand across his chest in Gajahasta, and this hand is raised, and he is trying to dance his own in his own way, and he is also accompanied by the halo around there, the orb, which is there around right behind him. So this is a classic example and a very important one too. One more equally stunning and extremely important Nataraja representation is again from Shatrughneshwara temple, yet another bas-relief, which is accompanied by door guardians in the door jamb, and you have the Kumbha auspicious emblems that are housed. So when you have these in four corners, visualize it as a mandapa with four columns. Though it is flat and seen as a plate herein, it can represent a mandapa with four pillars, creating the dance stage on which Nataraja is actually performing his dance. And the best part and the most significant image that it is, though vandalized close to 60-70%, this is extremely important because unlike the other Natarajas, the Ardhanarishwara Tattvam of Nataraja, or being half man, half woman combination, is explicitly shown here by the difference in bangles. Shiva wears a kankan, the right side, which is Shiva's depiction, wears a kankan, and the left side, there are bangles to depict Shakti. And if that is not enough, you have a Nandi here, Simha here on the left. And if even that is not enough, the right leg is shown without any specific representation of clothing, but the left leg, the overflowing sari is depicted here. So three important features that you can see now, but of course it should have been even more detailed, especially the representation of the bosom on one side, on the left side. Unfortunately, it's partly, we've lost the sculpture. So an Ardhanarishwara Nataraja, one of those earliest representations again of Nataraja in Ardhanarishwara pose. So we've been noticing the development like this. And the last example from Odisha for today is in Mukteshwar temple, an extremely complicated and a very well-developed imagery from the Chandravamshis of Kalinga and closely from the 10th century. And the ornamentation takes the pie here. So you can see starting from his hairlock, you know, the hair strands and the way he has tied it into two levels of bund is beautifully depicted. The halo is there, very artistic, and the hairlock is covered with flowers on both the sides. And he has a pendant right there, what is called as the Lalata Pattam. Lalatam is the forehead, so that partly covers the forehead. The third eye is visible, and the difference in earring is very clearly shown. The chin mudrai develops, and the right arm is thrown in the left direction as Gajahasta. The waistband and the complications in the jewelry kind of develops really well. He's shown wearing what looks like a half pant, and his legs, the finger and the toes, toes especially, are depicted in the most detailed fashion. Holding the snake continues. The veena that he was playing, holding across his chest, gets shifted to one hand right there. So veena dhara with multiple arms, Trishula, Akshamala, all that kind of continues. So the very first one that we saw from Asanpath to the last example from Orissa that we've taken for today, Akshamala, Veena, and those features kind of continue. The changes are from Gajahasta, Chinmudra are new elements that have come in, and Chatura Tandavam also continues. Two more important and interesting features that are added here is, to the right of Shiva is Ganesha. Like how you saw Subramanya in the Shatrughneshwara temple, you have Ganesha here, and you have another person sitting very cutely on a tripod, bejeweled in fact, very richly ornamented, playing percussion instrument. There are like what looks like a tabla. Of course, an early version should be. So there are two parts to it, which is kept together, the instrument, and he's playing it. So musical accompanists are a part and parcel of Shiva's dance always. Now we are shifting over to Ellora. We're going to see some important caves alone. The one in the cave 21 has Shiva along with Kali there, and celestials who are watching his dance. Parvati is there, so the depiction of Parvati, differentiating between Parvati and Kali, kind of starts here. And again, Chatura Tandavam, and there are no complicated weapons that he is holding, but a musician playing a percussion instrument and another flautist playing the flute here is depicted. So a proper musical band has come in one corner, very similar to the performances that we see today, dance performances, where the central stage is for the dancer. One corner, you have the accompanying artists, the musicians, and the band sits in one corner, and the other side is balanced by the people who are attending the performance. Another in cave 14, this is even more special because the concept of dancing in a stage or in a sabha kind of develops. So the dancer is always given a pedestal, a stage here. And then the musicians are on this side. You have a flautist, you have a percussionist, and one more person playing what looks like a string instrument. That's Parvati in a very stylistic fashion, leaning on the Nandi, holding the hands of Ganesha and Subramanya. So the family portrait concept comes in very well. Shiva, Parvati, Ganesha, and Subramanya, while the dad is dancing like this to the best of the music available, mother and the two little kids are watching it, very poetically done. And then you have a few from the Ashtadik Balakas depicted here. To begin with, that's Agni on a ram. That's a ram, the two horns that you can see. And that's Indra on an elephant. And then you have other celestials who are depicted. And to show that this is up above in the sky, the heavens, in fact, the image of, there are curves that are brought out there to depict clouds. And on this side, you have Brahma on the Hamsavahana and Vishnu on Garuda. So complete evolution of all the important deities in Hindu religion as prescribed in the traditional codified books are all brought in. And one more important feature here is Bringi Maharishi, that skeletal figure that you see there, that's Bringi, a very, very important devotee of Shiva. He was very particular that he wouldn't even worship Parvati. That's how specific he was. And of course, there is a story, there is a Puranic episode which speaks as to why he lost his flesh and why he's depicted in a skeletal fashion. I'm not getting into those details, but just know that he's one of those important devotees of Shiva. Then in cave 16, the most important Kailashanatha temple, you have various different depictions of Shiva. But to me personally, this is one of the earliest early good representation with four arms. Again, in all of these images in Kailasha, you see, in Ellora, you see, he is always given a special stage on which he dances. And trident seems to be a common feature in most of it. The Jatabharam kind of continues, and the circular face that we saw in Orissa gets a bit elongated. And in none of these images, his phallus is depicted. Shifting to Elephanta, here again, it's another very complicated setup. The Sabha is completely shown, like how we saw in cave 14. Here also, of course, the hands and the legs are vandalized, unfortunately. But this is certainly a Gajahasta that should run across his chest. And this is this rod that he holds around which snakes have wound themselves up. And another interesting depiction here is Ganesha with an Ankusham in his hand and Subramanya holding the spear. And then you have the other celestials like Brahma and all the other devatas who are part of the audience here. This is Vishnu on the Garuda Vahana. That's the Garudan, and Vishnu is balancing him on the neck of Garuda, on the shoulders of Garuda. This is Indra on his Airavata, elephant. Shakti, who is again witnessing the dance. So, framing it completely with all the devatas becoming a witness to this cosmic dance of Shiva, the first important person being Shakti, because she is referred to as Isatandava Sakshini, the one who stood witness for this beautiful grand dance of Shiva. So most of these stone panels that we see, this is from Alampur, Andhra. Again, you can see the same tradition, but for the snake which he's been holding on his head, up above his head, has shifted in some places. The composition varies, but Chaturatandavam, the Gajahastam, one hand in Abhaya Mudrai, holding the Trishulam, kind of continues. A very one other early depiction after what we saw in one of the panels in Kailashanatha temple in Ellora. This is another early depiction with four-armed Nataraja, but he is again accompanied by musicians, a percussionist, and other celestials who are awestruck by the depiction there. From the Western Chalukyas. Yet another important and unique ceiling panel that we see is a very similar looking Chaturatandava pose with the four the accompanists and the celestials framing into that square. But this panel is completed with the depiction of the 8 Digbalakas, Ashtadiggbalakas, starting from Indra in the eastern direction, and it kind of goes in the circular pattern. So that is Varuna on the Makara and Vayu on the deer. So it continues. So all of them in their respective Vahanas in Alampura. We're shifting over to central India, and in Ujjain by the Chandala dynasty, a stone image, which is of course in museum now. And again, you see the snake that was held up above his head. Then the Gajahastam still continues. But what is unique here is the artist has beautifully composed the space that he managed to earn right there between the thighs of Shiva. He's managed to depict Subramanya with his Karanta Makuta, that's what the crown that a Kshatriya wears. And like Subramanya and Shatrughneshwara temple, he also tries to imitate his father. So you can see those two parallel lines. That is the Gajahastam of Shiva, and that is of Subramanya. Excuse me. And that's his Abhayahasta, Subramanya's Abhayahasta, and that of Shiva. So this is a very classic example at an artistic level also to understand how a composition works out. Just imagine the space being blank without the image. It would look very odd and unfinished. So the artist has very beautifully captured Subramanya in that frame, and he has managed to make him imitate Shiva. And one more again from Gwalior Museum of Shiva. This is a bit more complicated with the percussionist is here. Holding of the snake continues. And the ornaments, here it is very clearly depicted as Spatika Kundalam. And this also follows the Spatika Kundalam, unlike the Patra Kundalam that we saw in Orissa. This is basically Spatika bead that is worn as a Kundalam. And there are few Shaivite schools, there are different branches of Shaivism. So a few of them prescribe wearing Spatikam as earrings. It's in fact a mandate, not just a prescription, it's a mandate to wear Spatika Kundalam. So maybe these are from temples which followed those specific schools of Shaivism. Another very complicated 10-armed grand, but grand as in the ornamentation is grand, depiction of Nataraja is what was excavated in a place called Dungrapadi near Sambalpur, estimated to be around 8th century. I personally feel it should be a little more later. What is special here is all the while you had the Jatabharam, which was tied into a perfect knot and kept as a bun on top of his head. Here you see the matted hair locks, probably because of the fast movement. A few strands have come out of the tied bun, and it is kind of spreading in all possible directions. And another depiction is what looks like a devotee who is holding his hands up above, praying and submitting to Shiva. Probably this is not exactly Nataraja, but another form of dancing Shiva where he is probably slaying an asura. There are several forms, like for example, Kala Samhara Murti, where Shiva dances on Yama, or these kind of Samhara Murtis also where he performs a Tandava. So maybe it's a depiction that way. Another three-faced dancing Shiva is from the very popular Ranipur Chaushat Yogini temple, very classic, unique depiction of the 64 yoginis in a circular pattern. And in the central pedestal, there is a small four-pillared mandapa which houses an image of Shiva, which is three-faced. And here again, the Gajahasta is missing, but holding the snake there continues. And all other features are there, holding the trident, and he is balancing himself on the Nandi. You can see the Nandi there with its hump. And similar to Subramanya that we saw in Ujjain, there is Ganesha who is trying to depict his father. You can see how clearly the Gajahastam that Shiva maintains, which looks like an L bend like that, is exactly followed here for Ganesha also. From Rajasthan, just one example from Rajasthan I'm picking to depict what looks more like a Karana. All the while we've been seeing Shiva as Nataraja, wherein he's posing in the front side. This is probably a depiction of one of those 108 Karanas, wherein Shiva has completely twisted. Though he's exposing his rear side here, the front part and the face is visible because he has twisted his torso to the maximum extent possible. And this is one of those 108 prescribed Karanas. So a very unique one from Rajasthan, where he's turned and depicting his back. Now coming to South, so the very classic and the most described dance of Nataraja, the 18-armed grand bas-relief image in the first cave of Badami. Very popular depiction from the Chalukyas, and it holds the snake there. The halo has developed into what looks like an oval shape because the face and the hairlock has moved from being circular into an oval composition. Wearing different earrings continues. Holding the trident and the veena is also there. The Nandi is there, and giving him a pedestal, but making it into a Padmapeetham has started. All the while in Ellora, all that we saw was a plain pedestal. But here you can see the rectangular pedestal is split into two equal halves, and they've depicted lotus petal motifs. So that's what is a rudimentary version of Padmapeetham, because the Dhyana Slokams authored in the Agamas, a few of them also speak about enshrining the deities on a Padmapeetham or a pedestal which is shaped like a lotus. So accompanying artists are there. What I like here is like two different sizes of percussion instrument, and he's shown again sitting there, and Ganesha's image continues. A very detailed cave from Aihole, the 10-armed Nataraja, while most features continues from the first cave of Badami, like holding the snake above there, the hood has been beautifully depicted, and the scaly body of the snake is also depicted, where this is like extreme fine tuning, and so the artist has rendered his best. Developing textures in stone has started because they've been trying their hands, and it's a hard variety of stone. Bringing out maximum texture is quite possible. So making the vestment with those lines, depicting it with those lines, gives you a sense of texture to it. So, and the Yajnapavitam or the sacred thread develops, and you see these similar to the Chalukyas and with the Pallavas. And this is again a complicated, huge canvas wherein Shiva is shown depicting, Shiva is depicted dancing amidst the Saptamatrikas. So you have Ganesha here, Skanda, and Parvati standing next to him. Yeah, that's the cave. So a very beautiful cave with the Saptamatrikas split on either sides. You have Shiva dancing there in the center with Ganesha here, Subramanya right there, and that's one of the arms of Parvati. That's a complete picture of the family. So Shiva in the center, Parvati, she's awestruck. So this hand is shown like, where she's probably resting her chin upon. And this is one early depiction of Parvati who's awestruck by the dance. And this kind of continues in several paintings up until later period also. So, and the halos are depicted. The orb-like feature there. And every arm is shown with Bahu Valayams, or the bangles that are worn around one's arm. Ganesha here, Subramanya here, and one of these Saptamatrika is here. Yeah, that's Varahi, and the other two. So that kind of continues. You have Varahi followed by Indrani and Chamunda. Yeah, that's the complete panel. It's like 3 different pictures brought together. So the Saptamatrikas start from this side and it goes Brahmi, Maheshwari, Vaishnavi, Kaumari, and you have Varahi, Indrani, and Chamunda on the other side. So that's like a beautiful panoramic depiction with Shiva dancing in the center. And of course, these are very specific cult depictions as Shiva's family being brought in between the Saptamatrikas. So we need to study in detail Agamas and other philosophical works of different schools of Shaivism to understand. This is an artist's depiction that I borrowed from the internet. Patadakal, that kind of completes the triangle, Dayahol Vadami Patadakal triangle. So this is another Samhara Tandavam. So you see a demon. A few wrongly identified this as Apasmara Purusha, or the embodiment of ignorance, but this is more an Asura. So this is like a Samhara Tandavam. The Chatura Tandavam continues. Gajahastam, all the way from right hand, it is shifted over to the left hand, and the right becomes the hand for Abhayam, and the Damarukam appears. So again, we've been seeing Akshamalai, Veena and other things. So one early depiction of the Damaru, and very uniquely, he holds the Rishabha Dvajam. That's the flag. You see the Rishabha on top. He's shown seated on a pedestal, and it continues. So the Rishabha Dvajam. One more from the pediment of Patadakal. So Parvati is here, the Rishabham there. He holds a small stick around which a snake is tied. There is one more snake that he's holding. So all the while, Gajahastam has shifted from right to left, and the right hand becomes Abhayahastam. Again in Chatura Tandava. Please note, till now also we have not started with Bhujanga Trasitam. This is one of the milestone depictions of Nataraja, starting from the 7th century Pallava, from Mahendravarma's time, a 4-armed depiction of Bhujanga Trasitam. So till now it was Chatura Tandavam, where both the legs were, one leg was stood firm on the pedestal and the other was slightly lifted, only to be balanced on the toes. So here the leg has been completely lifted. The left leg has completely lifted and swung up above in air. A very classic and a must-visit shrine is the Shiyamangalam Cave Temple, close to Chennai, a couple of drive from Chennai, a couple of hours drive from Chennai. One of the earliest depictions of Bhujanga Trasitam. Now, it cannot be out of nowhere that the Bhujanga Trasitam came in. So it was around this time that these things started, and slowly the importance shifted from Chatura Tandavam to Bhujanga Trasitam. And another unique depiction here is Shiva balancing a pot of fire. This is completely not seen in any of those Orissa sculptures that we've seen, or might be there is a depiction where he holds a small goblet of fire, but this is an elaborate bowl on which he holds, which has fire in it. And again, no more, the Jatabaram is no more all finely tied and complete. It's shown flying in all possible directions. So the dance and the dynamism kind of improves. Another classic bronze from the Pallavas is from Kuram, place near Kanchipuram, a 9th century classic. It is housed in Madras Museum today. So here again, the Chatura Tandavam still continues. So as I told you, though Bhujanga Trasitam enters, Chatura Tandavam continued even till the Imperial Chola bronzes. This is also equally old, which has one of the earliest depictions of the Ananda Tandavam. So you have the Damaru, the Agni in this hand, and a very classic depiction of the Ananda Tandavam has started from the 9th century. That is another important influence to be noted here is that of Manikavachakar, one of those important saint poets who stayed in Chidambaram, the town, the sacred town, which houses the most popular temple of Nataraja, and he seems to have he has referred to the dance there in Bhujanga Trasita form. So probably this is one of those early depictions, and the influence is from sacred literature also. another from the Pallavas, but a stone depiction in the Kailasanatha temple in Kanchipuram, what looks like tracing the symbol, the swastika symbol. An elaborate panel, like how we saw in Aihole, where the complete panel is split into 3 parts of the cave. Though it's a flat panel here, they've managed to bring it within 3 different frames. So one is for the music band, percussionist, flautist, a person playing cymbals, and so that's composed there. That is the stage for Shiva to perform. And this is the audience here, which is primarily Parvati, very stylistically leaning on a plank, and the other Ganas who are dancing with Shiva. The Pandyas, of course, the Pandyas are very special because they have a local tradition and a Puranic episode which speaks about how Shiva, to grant the wish for a Pandya king, managed to shift his right leg instead of the left leg that is the most common in Ananda Tandava. Generally, we see his left leg that rises up, but here, to honor the prayers of a Pandya king who requested Shiva to lift his right leg up, because he's been seeing Shiva dancing with his left leg all through, and he understood that it might be painful and requested Shiva, to honor him, honor his prayers, and in order to bless him, Shiva shifted and raised his right leg. So this, as the tradition continues in several bronze icons of Nataraja, especially in the Pandya country. That is like down south of Tamil Nadu with Madurai as the center. So this is a classic depiction with the Apasmara Purusha. Now the dwarf-like demon that you see there is an embodiment of ignorance. So when that is submitted at the feet of Shiva, when one submits his or her arrogance and ignorance at the feet of Shiva, you be blessed. A 9th century classic Pandya image. So the bronze icon also, they've started depicting the Jatabharam flying, the hairlocks, the mantled hairlocks are flying, and stabilization of what he holds in his hand, the Agni and Damaru happens. Now that the legs are shifted here, the ornaments, all that matches with that. The Chatura Tandavam, again, from the Cholas. Now I'm quickly going to show a very classic selected examples from the Cholas, because Cholas and Nataraja are almost, they're synonymous. So casting Nataraja bronzes in all possible sizes and different forms of dances is what the Cholas patronized in. Cholas identified Chidambaram to be their religious capital, and Nataraja form of Shiva to be the most important form of Shiva to be worshipped. There are historic, political, religious and spiritual reasons to it. I'm not exploring that because of the constraint of time, but it is extremely important to understand the reason as to why the Cholas patronized the form of Nataraja very particularly. There is a lot of religious and school-based reasons for it, which is very interesting too. So one of those early classic Chola bronzes of Nataraja, wherein framing Nataraja in a circle kind of gets established. Multiple arms, all that gets reduced to just 4 arms, standard, with the Abhaya Hastam through the right, and the lower left depicts Gajahastam, Damaru, and Agni. So these become the standard fixed elements that he holds in his hand. And depiction of Nataraja is incomplete without Apasmara Purusha, or the personification of ignorance, that when submitted under the feet of Nataraja gets stamped, and he raises you up because you've sought refuge at his feet. And the early Chola bronzes generally have accompanying devotees as a part of the pedestal in which he dances. Here in this particular example, you see Banasura, another very important devotee of Shiva, and he is always given the position. He is always given the duty of playing the percussion instrument. So it starts from a simple one-phased percussion instrument and goes all the way up to the Panchamukha Vadhyam. That's a 5-phased percussion instrument that one has to play, and that's a very favorite and a traditional ancient instrument that accompanies Nataraja's dance. So that's Banasura. And 2 of his arms are in Vismaya Mudra, which is, he's just exclaiming, he's awestruck and he's depicting that. And on this side is the most special devotee of Shiva, a woman saint who's one of those 63 Nayanmars called as Karaikal Ammayar, who visited the holy Kailasha. She walked on her head to the Kailasha and requested, the prayers that she had for Shiva was, She just wanted to accompany Shiva, sing whenever he wanted to dance. That was her prayer, and Shiva blessed her with that. So again, a painting of Nataraja or a bas-relief sculpture, or in some cases even depiction of Nataraja in bronze, is incomplete without Karaikal Ammayar. So in an early stage, she is a part of the original icon, and development later stages, she is an independent icon that is made and installed just next to that of Nataraja. So as it continues. So the circular pedestal, or what looks like a horseshoe shape. So the Damaru Agni continues, and the development of several features gets standardized on the hairlocks, like the crescent moon. And this shape that you see there is a bunch of rooster's feather, and the Umattam Pushpam, that's a very unique flower that is only grown in cremation ground, that goes on to that's in the shape of a funnel that goes on to decorate Shiva. That little circle that you see right in the center is a Kapala, the skull face, and the Ganga is also depicted in some cases. Herein, Ganga is shown here balancing herself on the shoulders, because the hairlock kind of falls on his shoulders. So you can see the rear side. This is when you notice Shiva's hair not going like this in the side, but resting on his shoulders and falling up till his hips. You can identify that as a 10th or early 11th century Chola icons, mostly 10th in fact. So, the later period Cholas specialize in making the hair fly like that. So connecting it from the head of Shiva to the arch. But in the early stages, it was very beautifully flowing like this on his shoulders. So struck to one hair strand is Ganga there. That's on the rear side. What looks like a mermaid here, that's Ganga. And Karaikal Ammayar and Banasura are replaced by two Shivaganas. One is playing a percussion instrument, and other is playing a pair of cymbals. Apasmara Purusha is there. In fact, identifying all the different postures of Apasmara Purusha is a good, nice monograph all by itself. It's a good, nice small research that can be done, because the sculptors have brought out their best artistic ability in depicting Apasmara Purusha doing a lot of funny things. He poses with a hi-fi, or sometimes there is a thumbs up image that he poses with, and very cute little beings they are, and you can document them exclusively. So the ornamentation also develops, and the structural stability is achieved by fixing the bronze icon with the arch with as many possible aspects as possible. One is getting his Uttarabandham, that rope that piece of cloth that he ties around his waist. It's shown like it's flying out in air, and that attaches the main icon with the arch. There is a snake which gets projected too. That's the hood of the snake, and you can see its scaly body. So these are two elements again which get standardized in almost all of the Imperial Chola icons. So that helps in getting some structural stability to the icon. And one more evolution that you can notice is in the early forms, you see Nataraja holding the fire in a small pan-like structure. The fire is, so the fire is held in a small pan. And in the later period, it kind of shifts over into the goblet of fire being balanced on his palms directly. This is a very classic miniature again. For the period, there is a debate about which period he belongs to, but a very classic miniature icon, hardly 6 to 7 inches tall, kept in the Tanjore Museum, where there are a couple of shelves exclusively for miniature icons. So this is one from there. So the Damaru, Abhayahastam, the Agni, and the hairlocks that falls. From the late Pallava, standardization begins. So you see the repeated features all again. So that's again Ganga, the crescent moon, feather, a bunch of rooster feathers, and the snake is there. So they've managed a couple of more elements to get the Moola Murti attached to the core icon of Nataraja attached to the orb. And that's his Angavastram that flies there, which again connects it to the circle. So what started with a snake being held on top of his head to form the arch gets developed later to depict a glowing circle with fire flames and there are more spiritual significance that are given to it. By around this period of Imperial Chola, of course, it started a couple of centuries before the Cholas, but going by the poetic references in the Tevaram and other sacred literature which speaks about Nataraja and his form, especially that of Tirumantram and more, assigning characteristic reasons to each of the feature comes in. So Nataraja, according to the traditional Shaiva, is believed to perform 5 acts: creation of the universe, sustaining all the life forms here, destructing it whenever he wishes, hiding a few features before the individual is matured or seasoned. Finally, when the individual is has attained the level of spiritual maturity, blessing happens. So creation, sustaining, destruction, hiding, and blessing. These are the 5 important acts of Shiva that which each of the elements that he holds depicts. So the Damaru is where the primordial sound comes from. So it's said that both the ancient languages of India, Tamil and Sanskrit, is all the aksharas in both the languages are believed to have come from the Damaru of Shiva, one from each face. So that sound, the origin of sound, and so this is considered to be a depiction of creation. The fire denotes destruction, and this is sustaining, and the leg that is lifted shows blessing, and the hand that kind of hides and the leg that balances here depicts hiding without exposing the ultimate truth before it is understood. There are certain differences in what element depicts what, but you know, the 5 aspects, the 5 acts that he performs and the elements that depicts it is kind of standardized more. So you can see all along, you saw the Jatabaram, which was flowing on his shoulders and fell on his back and touched his hip. Now, around 12th and 13th century, that's like the middle and the later Cholas, the hair locks very beautifully gets, it starts flying in the direction, and that achieves the best possible structural stability to the Murti, and a perfect circle is achieved. Until now, the pedestal on which Nataraja was standing was heavy and a rectangular one. And now that also becomes, the size is reduced and it is made into a beautiful semicircular pedestal with depiction of floral motifs, lotus petals basically. So you can recall what we saw in Badami Cave 1 imagery, wherein the pedestal had depiction of lotus motifs. So the Padmapitam develops into this form. The Apasmara Purusha still remains, and all other features are there. So as it develops, anthropometry and ergonomics is best to understand. And I would always suggest the Tanjavur, the art gallery in Tanjavur maintained by the government is to be the best place to understand Nataraja iconography. In fact, there is one exclusive room which has only Nataraja display. And what is to be best noticed and appreciated there is the way his, the hip is positioned. When you dance, especially, with all this tilt and the shift in the physics, the hip fat kind of gets accumulated in one side. And, the anthropometry that comes in and the anatomy, to be more specific, wherein, the parts of the body where flesh kind of gets collected when you dance like this, all that is very beautifully and cutely depicted. Sorry for the usage of word cute, but I think that's what I feel at the very site of these classic 11th, 12th and 13th century Nataraja bronzes. Yeah, this is supposed to be the most beautiful depiction, the most celebrated Tiruvalangadu Nataraja, who was discovered in a subterranean channel, hiding for a very long time in a temple called Tiruvalangadu in the outskirts of Chennai. And by chance, the collector from the museum, the government museum in Chennai, who were there at Tiruvalangadu during the discovery, was spared this. And so this was brought to Chennai only to be studied by world-renowned art historians, to be identified as the most graceful depiction of Nataraja. But of course, opinions vary, but this is popularly addressed as the most graceful depiction. So what I like personally in some of, again, the same period is the thumb, the toe there, the first thumb finger there in the toe splits from all the other 4 fingers. Now, when you dance, you can try doing it yourself. When you have to pose like Nataraja for some time, it is the balance is better achieved by giving a stress in your thumb and to depict that. So probably the sculptor should have known the nuances of performing dance also. Apart from just getting the composition right the anthropometry balanced and the depiction balanced and all that, the central line and the artistic balance. Apart from that, physically balancing oneself should also have been mastered, at least some rudimentary lessons in it. And I wouldn't be surprised if the sculptor was also a dancer and understood the nuances of dance. And this is exactly what I told you about the shift in flesh and the study that way. So the torso isn't flat, it's tilted a bit, it's shifted to the right side. And so you can see that very graceful curve that has developed here. So these are those very specific nuances that has got to be studied when it comes to appreciating Chola Nataraja bronzes exclusively. We are nearing the end, 5 more minutes. So this is another detailed depiction, the most artistic Nataraja ever done in stone in the celebrated Gangaikonda Cholapuram temple, the group of UNESCO World Heritage Monuments here, done by Rajendra, the illustrious son of Rajaraja Chola. So this again depicts Nataraja, four-armed, and all other features are there. But what makes it complicated and very detailed is all the accompanying deities. So that's a variety of Alamaram, Vatavriksham, and you have Surya and Chandra on either sides. And the Vatavriksham is a part of Dakshinamurti panel, in fact. Here, these are the periods when Bhairava and Dakshinamurti, Nataraja, and all these different forms of Shiva. So a kind of correlation between these different forms were identified and portrayed. So one rare example where the Vatavriksham becomes a part of Nataraja panel. The headgear with the feather and flowers, skull, crescent moon, everything is there. Ganga is a part of it also. But apart from that, you have Ganesha riding a mouse, Subramanya on a peacock, Banasura playing the percussion instrument, Uma or Shivakama Sundari, Parvati, appreciating the dance of Nataraja, again leaning on the Rishabha. Now this is another common feature that we've been seeing from Ellora. So Uma balances herself, leans on the Rishabha in a very graceful fashion. And you have multi-armed Kali. So the Puranic episode of how Shiva and Kali competed in dance and how Shiva managed to win. So Kali is also a part. You can see Kali with the Jwala Makutam and multi-armed. And if you can notice, there is a very fragile 3-legged depiction of Bringi. The one we saw as a skeletal image in Ellora is depicted as a 3-legged Bringi Maharishi. That's Apasmara Purusha. Partly in this photograph, you can see Karikal Ammayar, the woman who wanted to shed her beauty and youthfulness to sing right, who wanted to sit right under the feet of Shiva and dance every time and sing every time he danced. So she is there playing a pair of cymbals. There are other Shiva Ganas who are dancing along with him. An elaborate panel which has got to be studied best. In Tanjavur, there is this unique depiction of Shiva performing all the 91 of the 108 Karanas. This is done in the first story level in the chamber, which is generally not open to public. Thankfully, the government has come up with a plan to cast these icons in life size as panels and exhibited in a beautifully kept gallery inside the temple campus. So for people who don't have access to it can appreciate it, which is also done in stone texture and exhibited there in the gallery. So these are the depiction of 108 Karanas that are described elaborately in Bharata's Natya Shastra. Karanas are basically different combinations of hand, the Hastamudrai, your legs, and so you can see each of it is different. So there are specific slokas which describe each of the Karana, and this is a unique place where Shiva himself is depicted performing the Karanas. You have other temples like Shiva temple in Tiruvannamalai and Chidambaram and Vridhachalam, where you see a woman performing all the 108 Karanas, but this is a unique depiction of Shiva himself performing all the Karanas. Unfortunately, it's incomplete. You only have 91 of the 108 Karanas. Of all the bronzes patronized and donated to various Shiva temples by the Cholas, the grandest and the most tallest is in a place called Koneri Rajapuram near Kumbakonam. And this temple was patronized by Shembiyan Mahadeviyar, the most celebrated aunt and a great Shiva devotee, aunt of Rajaraja the Great, and a devout woman from the royal Chola community, royal Chola lineage. And she has constructed several temples that were sanctified by the sacred poems of the Nayanmars. She has expanded those temples and donated several bronzes. And the most tallest and the grand looking is in this temple. He's close to 7 feet, 6.5 to 7 feet tall. Imagine doing this 1,000 years back. Just one example from the Hoysalas. So the typical artistic feature and ornamentation style and all that continues. Not getting into that, that's very characteristic and typical of the Hoysalas. A few unique features to be seen here are Shiva is depicted holding a Katwanga. Katwanga is a weapon that usually Bhairava holds. That is basically the skull that is fixed to the spine bone. That's a weapon that usually the Kapalika school or a few other schools of Shaivism prescribes to be kept handy. So he's holding a Katwanga, and you can recall how we saw Akshamala being depicted as Shiva holding it in one hand in the examples that we saw in Orissa. That kind of continues here also. Trishula, bow, Kapala Patram, and all that continues. Probably this is a direct impact of the popularity that Kalamukha school had in Karnataka. Maybe a few traces of it also continued till the Hoysala period, and these are an extension of that. The music team continues. So there is a flautist, there is a percussionist, one more accompanying percussionist here, and that's Bringi Maharishi. Again, this is not the usual Bhujanga Trasitam, this is Chatura Tandavam. One from a later period, the 17th century Madurai Nayak period. I told you about the Madurai Pandya story, where the Pandya king requested Shiva to shift his dance, shift his leg from left to right. So this depicts Shiva with his left leg raised up and multi-armed, 10-armed Nataraja. This is the bronze icon installed and worshipped in Madurai temple. You can see how the Jatabaram and the elaboration and all that have reduced by and large after the imperial Cholas. Now, in conclusion, this is an image from Dhaka, from the Pala dynasty, and multi-armed Nataraja, and you can see how the hands are all facing different directions. Chaturatandava Murti on a Rishabha. He's in fact dancing very particularly on the hump of the Nandi. Then you have all the celestials, several Devatas, and on a close look, you can identify Ganesha, Subramanya, Veerabhadra, Bhairava, Bringi Maharishi, Surya, Chandra, Narayana, Vishnu, Brahma, and all the 8 directional gods. Everybody, they're all a part. And Ganga is there, Shivakama Sundari or Parvati is seen. So it's an elaborate panel. You can see each of them depicted there as small scale images in the arch. There is a strikingly similar Murti made out of bronze, also from the Pala period. And you can see it's almost similar, starting from the headgear and 10-armed Nataraja, his hands all positioned facing different directions. Very similar, you have the Nandi here, and Shiva is balancing himself on the hump. Then you have Surya and Chandra, that's Subramanya on his peacock. Ganapati is here. You have all other deities, Veerabhadra, Bhairava, and everybody is shown there. And you have other Ganas, Shiva Ganas, who are shown on the pedestal. This is also from the Pala period, but as an anecdote, I'm sure most of you might be knowing, for people who might not be knowing, this bronze is still under worship. And quite surprisingly, he is in a very, very grand temple, which is unfortunately not so popular, in a tiny village in South India, in Tamil Nadu, in a village called Melak Kadambur. A bronze icon which was in worship somewhere in some Shiva temple, probably in the Pala dynasty, somewhere in today's Bangladesh or West Bengal area, has traveled all the way from there and reached a small village temple near Chidambaram, and he's housed there and worshipped still. The reason being, this was brought back, this icon of Shiva was brought back by Rajendra Chola as his war trophy after his expedition with the Pala dynasty. After winning the Palas, he managed to bring a lot of different artifacts as war trophy, one of which is this, and this was installed in a temple later during Kulothunga's period in a place called Melak Kadambur near Chidambaram. A temple which is architecturally very exclusive and special, unfortunately less known, but a must visit, very close to Chidambaram. So if you're coming here anytime soon, It's in fact between Chidambaram and Gangaikonda Cholapuram. So if you bring your guests or you come here on your own to a holiday to Chidambaram, please make sure that you visit this place called Melakadambur, where this bronze icon is kept, brought out only on rare occasions. In conclusion, Nataraja can be identified as the most dynamic image ever artistically sculpted or painted in India. The origin, the development, accommodating different regional principles, episodes from Itihasas and Puranas, and making alterations, showing different weapons, again with regional influence or spiritual reasons, and finally standardization. Is a wonderful long journey which is at least 2000 odd years old with recorded history. We can definitely extend it further older if we get enough evidences. So that's almost like traveling across a major section of the art history of India. So every school has its own depiction. I have conveniently missed many different schools. You have depictions from Uttar Pradesh and other places also. But yeah, with the time constraint, I've just chosen very few of them. Philosophical interpretation. The basic characteristics one has to study about Nataraja is to know about the number of arms each of the icon has, and what he holds in each of it, and the position of legs. These are the two most important. Basically, hands and legs, how they are positioned, is the foremost study that one has to do to appreciate a Nataraja icon, to start appreciating it. Philosophical interpretations enhances your appreciation. So if you try to spiritually catch hold of how the spiritual texts have shifted over to make the icon, it just enhances your interest in studying it. Local traditions, like for example, the Madurai Purana that I told you, where Nataraja had to shift his leg from left to right, those traditions are even more unique and specific to every region. And depiction as a performer all along, starting from the earliest that we saw in Asanpat, Nataraja is never all by himself. He is depicted with a bunch of devotees or musicians or Shakti as Parvati or Shivakami or Kali, Ganesha, Subramanya. There are several different combinations, but in majority of the cases, he's always shown with someone accompanying him. There are several other dances of Shiva. Most of the heroic deeds that he did, like Tripura Samhara or Kala Samharam, all of these heroic deeds, most of it, are accompanied by a dance of Shiva. And Tamil literature and the Puranas both speak and elaborate about different occasions, the different forms of dances that Shiva performed. So there is a particular dance that he performs during the Samhara, which is like destruction of the universe, when the Yuga is getting over. A particular dance that he performs along with his Betalas in the cremation ground. A particular dance that he performed only to be witnessed by Shakti and Brahma on the chariot when he was on his way for Tripura Samharam. A dance that he performs every day when the sun sets, the Pradosha Tandavam as it is called. Another dance called as Gauri Tandavam that he performs to be witnessed only by Shakti. So there are several different occasions in which Nataraja danced. Each of it has its own grammar, accompanying episode from the Puranas. And as the Purana depicts, as the Purana commands or describes, the weapons that he holds or the attributes, the headgear, the leg position, all that differs. So it is to be extensively studied and understood through works of scholars like Sri Ananda Kumara Swami and others, where the Nataraja has been studied extensively. So parallel reading of literature, spiritual texts, philosophical interpretations, art history, artistic principles, all that is required to understand the artistic tendency of Nataraja in a holistic fashion. So to understand evolution and growth and standardization of Nataraja icon is like almost understanding the complete art history of India. Once again, I thank the organization and all the organizers who have helped me and who gave this wonderful opportunity to share my little knowledge on this one particular subject of my interest. And so I've just projected my social media handles. So if there are any doubts that you want to get in touch with me for a discussion, well, you're most welcome. And it is all by the grace of Sri Tyagaraja Swami. And thank you once again. Sri Tyagaraja Maharajo Vijayate.